Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is fitness over 50, fitness over 40. And I have the perfect person to talk about this with. His name is Carlton-Appleton. He is a certified personal trainer, a movement specialist, and the owner at Renaissance Fitness and Personal Training, LLC, which is dedicated to restoring what was for people 50 and over. He is also the creator of Revolution, Ageless Body, helping you become faster and stronger in your 40s and beyond, and the host of the Fitness Reborn Podcast, redefining, rediscovering, reimagining fitness, one podcast at a time, which provides tangible and valuable content to people regarding every aspect of fitness, including physical, hormonal, mental, and spiritual health. Sean, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks again, Cheryl. It's good to be here. It's good to talk to you again.
Well, it's good to talk to you too. So just so the audience does know, I was a guest on your podcast recently, and we had a fantastic conversation and a really great time. So I'm really excited to turn the mic over to you and hear your fitness journey. And I love everything that you're doing. It's just something I'm passionate about as well. So first of all, how did you get involved in fitness, the fitness industry, becoming a personal trainer, and how did your focus end up going into the over 40 and beyond population?
Well, I got into the fitness industry because years ago, my ex-wife and I, we got involved with this gym.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those kind of hit gyms. It's called Farrell's Extreme Body Shaping. It's kind of it's a chain, kind of more dominant in the Midwest where I live. And we got involved with that, and we both loved it because it's kickboxing and strength training, and everyone loves the kickboxing. And so I really got into that so much to the point where I was like researching, I was researching kickboxing and boxing and fights and all that kind of stuff here too. I had a little bit of a history of martial arts when I was a kid, but I had not done that in years. And this just kind of like re-sparked my interest in it. And so I really got into that. I joined a little bit after her, and eventually I became an instructor. So I became a group fitness instructor, and I absolutely loved it because, even though it was scary at first, but I knew that I would enjoy it just because I enjoyed the classes so much. So, and I absolutely loved it. And I had a ton of fun, like teaching my classes for the 45 minutes the classes went. And the people in my classes really seemed to respond well to it. They could tell I was having a good time. They appreciated the novelty that I brought to things, because I went off and did things that I don't think anyone else really did. And I really tried very hard to paint a vivid picture, like make them feel like they're actually in a fight or something like that, make them feel like that bag is going to punch you back if you don't keep moving, that kind of stuff. And, and people responded well to that. So I figured, hey, I'm pretty good at this kind of thing. I'm pretty good at coaching. I don't know all the nuances about, the physical body and the all the systems within the body and stuff like that at this time, but I know I can motivate people. And so I took it a step further, and I studied, and I got my personal training certification, and I founded my LLC back in fall of 2018. And I've just been building it ever since. It kind of got hit pretty hard by COVID. I think everyone in this industry probably can relate to that. It got hit pretty hard by COVID, but I did some Zoom classes, for a time, as a way to kind of compensate people for the time that they missed out on with me being in there in person. And so that was really my first entryway through those classes and getting my personal training certification. That was really my first entryway into the industry itself. So it's been a learning process ever since. Now, in terms of turning my focus into people who are in the 40 and above age bracket, I kind of got with that when I was in my late 30s, because as I learned more, I learned that once you hit 40, it's kind of like it's it's a big moment in your life physically to turn 40 years old. You know, you kind of hear about that when you're younger, that, you know, once you hit 40, you know, it's all kind of downhill from there and stuff like that. You hear that through academics, you hear that from the people around you, like your parents and stuff like that, who moan and groan about aches and pains and stuff like that. So you almost kind of dread it as you get older. But the more I learned, the more I observed, it didn't really have to be that way unless you just kind of resigned yourself to the sands of time, which I wasn't going to do. So I knew I was getting older. So I started thinking about, well, what do people want? What would they want from a trainer want from a trainer when they're 40 years old and they have kids and they have jobs, and you know, they're not some young, strong college athlete, maybe that they once were. So I started learning more and more about that, and that's where I came up with Ageless Body. So, and now just to say this, because I know it, Ageless Body, I know that's just inspired nonsense. Everybody's body ages. It has to age. Your body has to age. You wouldn't go through puberty if your body didn't age. So I know that. So it's really, but the concept of it behind it is that you are not at the whim of time necessarily. I mean, you are, but you aren't. It doesn't have to be as bad as you think it could be, but it does require some application on your part, and you can actually reverse certain things that have happened to you, or, you know, you can reverse certain things like joint pain and metabolic ailments and stuff like that, and, you know, weight that you can't get rid of if you actually do apply a little bit of your time and effort into it. So that's kind of where it comes from. So so yeah, I hope that was is that good enough there?
That's really good. Yeah, and that to me kind of just represents what I would call the warrior spirit, because you're not just sitting back and saying, okay, this is inevitable, this is going to happen. It's like, no, I'm going to fight it. I mean, yeah, our bodies are aging. If they weren't, we never would even come out of the womb, you know, because we're constantly changing and getting older. And, you know, like you said, it is a choice. And I always tell people getting older is inevitable. Being old is a choice. It's really similar to your tagline, which is aging isn't optional, but getting old is. And I think that people have often looked for an alternative of, you know, don't want to be sitting in that rocking chair, don't want to be sedentary as they start to go into those magical years of wisdom. Let's just put it that way. They want options, but what options were available to them? You know, going to the gym 3 times a week and having 20-year-old trainers telling us to lift more weights, or, you know, go to the gym or start running. And there wasn't that focus on joint health and focus on movement rather than just doing exercise. And like you said, you focus on the movement, not on the workouts. And I think that that in itself is magical. And I do want you to address that. But I also want to go way back to when you said you first started teaching fitness classes and you were really scared. It was very scary. And that might sound strange to the listeners, but as somebody who's taught many different movement, you know, modalities myself, when you start something new and you're teaching it for the first time, no matter how well you know it, it is intimidating.
Yeah, it's really intimidating. Well, it wasn't so much that my breadth of knowledge that I was really worried about. It was just the fact that I was standing in front of a class of people, and sometimes the room was pretty full, and I'm up there for 45 minutes, and you have to lead everything. And so, you know, people come there with this expectation they're going to get a killer workout for 45 minutes. And so, you know, it's really on you to provide that. And so I learned early on that, and I observed this as well, is that the best instructors of that were a mixture of, they knew the movements, they knew how to actually to tell people what to do, but they were a mixture of the instructor and a showman. And all the best ones I noticed were able to walk that tightrope between, you know, being an entertainer on one end, but also being an instructor on the other end. And that's kind of what keeps people captured. And something I wanted to follow up on, because we're saying, you know, how people don't have to resign themselves as they get older to just kind of degradation. in several of my classes, there was two people in particular. They were both in their 50s. They were always at the front of the class. Two people, and they were always killing it. This man and this woman, they were always killing it. Like they were just going hard all the time. It's a HIIT class. You're supposed to just it's full throttle, right? And they were just killing it. They were putting these 20-something-year-olds to shame who were barely even feeling like they were showing up. Maybe it's a combination of, they felt like they had something to prove. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't uncommon to have people that age in those classes, but they were just killing it. And I was just like, wow, look at them go. And they were working up a sweat. They were destroying these bags. And I was like, oh, wow, you guys are great. But yeah, that's a perfect example right there. It's like, just because you're 50 years old doesn't mean you have to just resign yourself to a rocking chair.
Well, and you can actually start at that age. I mean, maybe they didn't even start working out until they were in their 40s or 50s. Maybe life got in the way. So for the listeners, it's never too late to start. You're never too old to start. Just, get moving and keep moving. And that's, I think, the whole secret and the whole key to everything. But let's go back to the teaching too.
Sure.
And being that entertainer, because I know exactly what you're talking about. But it is so painful for me to be in a class. Like, I don't do fitness classes or take fitness classes, but dance classes, for example, be in a full ballet class. And there's the teacher just teaching their heart out. And the entire class is just blank stares looking at them. Absolutely no reaction, no emotion. And it's like, I would hate to be the one standing up there. It's like, are you paying attention? Because there really is an interaction between the students and the teacher. And I would think that being in front of a group like that would be so incredibly painful. You want to get them excited. You want to get them motivated, even if it's something like ballet. You want some type of response. There's nothing like looking into a room full of people and they're just staring back at you with blank looks on their faces.
Yeah, and you feel like you're just failing at your job too. And now,
Right.
Some people just, they don't respond to what you do, and they, for whatever reason, like they find your personality just appalling, or they just don't like the class. There's certain things you cannot control for. But overall, I think if you are making it something that's fun, I think that's the key word there is fun. And something that is also challenging is something that does actually deliver on what they actually came for. I think you're going to do just fine. Now, keep it lighthearted as well, too. I also, I poked fun at myself when I screwed things up, and, I cracked a joke here and there when I made a little faux pas or something like that. And, it's just, I understand, you're up there and you want to do a good job, and you feel like you're just absolutely bombing if no one seems to be responding to you. It kind of deepens your sympathy for grade school teachers when they stand in front of a class, and they're trying to teach something here, and they got these dead-eyed kids like going, what? I don't know. But yeah, so I guess it's something comparable to that too. But honestly, all you can really do is just go up there and give it your best. And if it doesn't go over, then it just doesn't go over too. But no one can claim that you didn't try.
Oh, there's the flip side of that too, that some of those people who are absolutely deadpan and just staring with a blank stare on their face after class would say, oh my God, that was wonderful. I had such a good time. And you're like, okay, that's just the way that they respond.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, it's just some people don't show you the traditional emotions that you would expect from a class. They don't show the excitement. They're just pretty stoic. And they may have walked away thinking, hey, that was just awesome. But you won't know it because you're not there when they go home.
Right.
So like I said, you just have to trust that you're doing as best you can. You're doing things the right way, and whatever comes from that comes from that.
And so now let's segue into going into Zoom classes then, because I think that was a whole shock. Well, pandemic and the shutdowns was a whole shock to everybody's system. But when you have a business where you're working with people in person, you're running a gym, you're teaching fitness classes. I mean, there was an initial kind of like, shock of, oh God, what am I going to do now? And then all of a sudden people realized that they could start coaching and teaching and training online, which was one of those epiphanies or head smacking moments. It was like, wow, we can do that. And so when did that realization come to you? And when did you pivot and start teaching on Zoom? And what was that like? Because going from being in person to teaching over a screen, I don't think was an easy transition, because I did it in ballet classes and it was not an easy transition for us. But eventually it got to be quite convenient.
Right. I was talking to other trainers and they were saying, oh, this is what they were doing. They were switching over to online classes. And that's kind of where the idea really came from. So I kind of saw that as a good second option to just not doing anything at all and having people just kind of languish there. So I just kind of set things up on Zoom, and as many people as I could possibly get into like a one class, and they weren't generally that many. I mean, it didn't really work for everybody.
Right.
And when you're a personal trainer or a physical therapist, a lot of your trade is actually being there and actually seeing in 3 dimensions the people you're working with, and actually being able to put your hands on things, correct things, manually manipulate different sort of things. And obviously you're robbed of that if you're going online. So some of those things I had to really sacrifice in order to go online. So instead of actually becoming like the detailed, in-depth trainings that I would normally do, it was more like just kind of, hey, let's get some general workouts in here. Let's just start to feel good. And let's just get something in for the day. And that really worked for quite a few people here too. So it wasn't, I couldn't go into the weeds of it like I normally did, but I was able to give people something. I was able to show up for them in some way and get them, to do some squats and do some push-ups and do some mobility work too that was less intensive. So we're going to talk about later, like the deep squats and things like that, and the lunges and the changing planes and things like that, and being able to work on rotational power, that kind of thing. So that's how I really got into it, and it did quite well for a little bit. It was when the COVID restrictions started to relax a little bit, I kind of got back out into it a little bit. And the Zoom classes pretty much came to a gradual end, which was good because I didn't want to do it forever. But it was, it was just a fact of life at that time. Of course, I say that time, we're only talking about what now, 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's been 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I haven't taken an in-person ballet class it'll be 3 years, or it would be 3 years next month. And somebody kind of bamboozled me into, as a friend that, I haven't seen her in 3 years. We were really good friends in ballet class, and, I miss her, and I had sent her a text, a happy birthday and Merry Christmas text, and I miss you. And she goes, well, we need to do something about that. So the next thing I knew, she's like, well, let's just take a ballet class together and then go out to lunch. And I'm going, oh, it's been 3 years. I mean, I've still been working out, doing my martial arts and pole, which will keep you in pretty good shape. But it's like getting back into an in-person ballet class. That's going to be a really interesting re-entry, let's say.
Yeah. That's the other thing about it too, is like when you go from being in a physical environment and you're actually working on something here now versus being at home and you're maybe doing the workouts at home, or you're doing something similar at home. Yeah, it'll keep you pretty tip top, but yeah, you do kind of lose the feel for things just a little bit, and that's just kind of a natural consequence.
Well, I am looking forward to being able to dance on a raised floor rather than cement. So that'll be kind of nice.
Maybe it'll be like riding a bicycle. It'll just come back to you pretty quickly.
I'll let you know. Okay, so let's talk about some of your techniques or some of your philosophies. And one of them is that you do focus on movement, not the workout, even though a lot of the things that you do are pretty intense. So if you want to address that, I would love to hear more about it. I know the listeners would too.
Well, the reason why I say movements rather than workouts is because workouts sound pretty sterile. And even the word exercise, again, sounds pretty sterile and very clinical. And that's fine. But honestly, I've noticed a lot of people tend to kind of recoil to the sound of workout. It's almost like, it's also similar to the sound of like diet.
Ooh,
People have stopped using the word diet because there's such a negative connotation. There's such a connotation of starvation and deprivation that comes with that sort of thing. And so people have started to gradually phase out the word diet and workout. And the reason why I say movement is because as you get older, that's what really matters. It's not the 500-pound squats that matter when you're 80 years old. If you can do that at 80 years old, my hat is off to you. I can't even do that now at 39 years old. But that's really, and honestly, in working with older people, I've noticed that is really what matters to them the most. It's not the showy ego lifting that you see, even though they may have done that when they were younger, and maybe that's what's caused them to have the pains that they're having now. So maybe that was a lesson learned. But movement is what matters most when you're getting older. And so kind of like a general a rule of thumb to remember about that is like when you get older, it's not the competitive medals that you're going to get from exercise, from training that matter. It's the question of, well, can I still carry my luggage across an airport when I'm 80 years old without having to stop or having to jump on one of these carts? That's a long-term consideration. And so movement over working out, and workouts again, like you said earlier on, it's very almost kind of static. Like you're in one position, you're doing one kind of movement, whether it's like a bicep curl or a squat or a deadlift or whatever else. And those are all just fine. I still do those things, but I also emphasize being able to change directions and things like that, and being able to rotate at my pelvis and being able to move backwards and stuff like that, rather just up and down and forward and forward. So my philosophy to that is just one that's very realistic. It's like, and I know this as I'm getting older, as I'm going to be 40 here in April. What really matters to me, I know, is the ability to still be able to move in a healthy and efficient sort of way. I'm still doing things that still matter. Like when I come home and, my son is asleep and maybe he's asleep in my bed because that's where my mom put him, just to get him to settle down. He's 8 years old. He's no featherweight. He wasn't even a featherweight necessarily when he was a baby. He's always been a big kid. I'm still doing things like lifting him up, lifting his limp body up off this bed to move him to his own bed. And he is long and heavy. And I still at times have had to carry him upstairs because he's asleep.
Wow.
I can't do that if I'm weak. I'm sorry. If I don't have my strength, I'm not going to be able to do that. So that's kind of how I look at it. And being able to keep your muscles and your fascia, that's a big thing. Your muscles and your fascia and your internal systems, and there's 11 of them all together working in concert with one another. Your lymphatic system, your circulatory system, central nervous system, all these things, they're all working together to keep your body moving. And so what they crave is diversity, and they crave novelty. And if you're doing the same thing day after day, like sitting, like we talked, you've mentioned sitting before. Sitting is kind of killer. I've heard it said it's just as bad as cigarette smoking. I don't think it's quite that bad.
I agree with you.
But I think it's bad. I think that's a gross exaggeration. But I think it's bad, especially when you say you wake up in the morning and you sit to eat breakfast. You get in your car. You're sitting in your car. A lot of people work office jobs these days. So you're sitting in an office, you get back in your car, you're sitting in your car, you go back at home, you're sitting at your dinner table and then onto your couch, and then you're back to bed. You're not getting a lot of movement in there. So, and that's going to cost you. That's a buildup. It's a compound effect. It's like exercise. The more you do it, the better off you be. The lack of it, the less you do of it, the worse off you're going to be. It keeps piling up on you until one day, you know, you're 50 or maybe 45 years old. You bend down to get your car keys because you dropped it, and guess what? Your back goes out. You know, because you changed direction suddenly in a way your body was not accustomed to, and now it's freaking out on you. And now you're on your way to the emergency room,
right?
And then you're going to see a chiropractor probably, and a massage therapist, and possibly a personal trainer, and you're gonna be inundated with all this stuff that you should have learned years ago, that you didn't learn, but now you're in such acute pain, and now it's suddenly reality just slapped you in the face.
Yeah, right. It's more like a ton of bricks, right? Or a 2x4.
Right.
What I love that you're talking about is functional strength and functional fitness, and just being able to have that quality of life all the way through, you know, into your 90s even. I have an aunt who's 90, she'll be 93 in a couple of days. And up until the pandemic started, she was still driving to her bowling league 3 times a week. But of course, the pandemic.
That's awesome.
It was, I mean, really, really inspiring. And I have another friend who's 93 who she's very mobile. She's still writing books, and she's driving and doing all the grocery shopping and the cooking and taking care of her husband, which, I mean, that's pretty amazing. And I think that that's what, to me, healthy aging is, being able to do everything that you want to do during the entire course of your life and not having any restrictions because of pain. And the other thing that really spoke to me when you were talking about, you know, wanting to be able to do things like moving backwards, bend down, pick something up, and that type of thing, is also balance. Because you want to keep training your balance as we mature, because that's the number one cause of, you know, demise in people as they mature. And I had a huge wipeout about a week and a half ago on the ice right outside of the dojo, that when I walked into class, it was just wet cement. Well, we didn't realize it. The temperature dropped in 2 hours. And when I walked out, it was a sheet of ice, but I couldn't see it. It was like black ice. And I fell so hard. But it was, you know, when I realized I was on the ground and all my stuff was scattered around me, and the guys were running out of the dojo to see if I was okay. And the first thing I did, I looked at them and I said, "Did you see my break fall?" Because, you know, I know how to fall. And I always wondered if it would spit out of me when I needed it. And it did. And, you know, Sensei eventually came out and started, sprinkling salt, a little late for that. And I says, they kept saying, "Are you hurt?" And I said, "No, I didn't get hurt at all." And he says, "That's because you knew what you were doing and you did everything right." So to me, balance and falling is a really big component. Getting down on the floor and back up again every day is really an important part of that fitness.
Yeah, for sure it is. And I had a similar experience to that. I think it was about a year ago or something. I was out with my son. We were out at this park. It was during winter, and we were going out into the woods and playing around as he likes to do. And so I followed him down this little tiny hill, going into this wooded area. And I slipped on some snowy mud, and I fell back, or turned right back on my my left hip. And, you know, and yeah, it hurt and it stung a little bit, and I got a mark on it, but I got back up pretty easily, and I was able to keep going. I didn't need to go to the doctor. I didn't need to go to the emergency room.
Right.
Now, you know, I know that I'm not that old, and so that shouldn't do me in. But still, I mean, I don't know anything about, you know, how to do the break, as you said, you know, how to actually fall or something like that. I just know I fell, and that's how a lot of falls actually happen. They are completely unplanned, unexpected. And you're exactly right, because falling actually is on the top 10 list for the death of elderly people or older people. So it's right up there. It's number 6 or number 7. So it's right up there, and the reason why a lot of people end up being dead because they fall back and they break their hip
Right.
and they don't heal very well, and they end up getting blood transfusion surgery, and so a lot of times they end up dying. So yeah. So being able to maintain your balance and also just strengthening your bones and
Exactly.
staving off osteoporosis and osteopenia and
Hmm.
sarcopenia, which is a loss of muscle. Again,
Hmm.
that lack of muscle will contribute to your lack of balance.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's all tied into it.
It is all tied into it. And I think when people realize that and they understand, how everything does work together, then that they are more motivated to try and do things rather than, oh my God, I got to go to the gym 3 times a week and do this stuff. But, movement is something we do it every day. And it's the quality of the movement and the amount of movement that we're doing that really makes a difference and adds up. And even, we were talking earlier before the recording, I was looking at some of your videos, and some of the things that you do are pretty intense, but you do it with the quality of movement and the accuracy of movement that I think makes it look almost effortless. And I
Yeah.
think that type of attention to your technique when you're doing that kind of work is what really helps strengthen and lubricate the joints and the fascia and the muscles and even, the nervous system even more. So would you like to talk a little bit more about some of the things that you do? It is actually very impressive. I'm going to try that plank with swan step as soon as my arms get a little bit less sore.
Sure. So one thing I made a video about this. One thing I do, and I said this in the video, I do these things every single day, and I literally do from almost the time I get up out of bed, is go into a deep squat, which is squatting down to, your butt is almost touching the ground. So ass to grass, you can call it like that. Your hamstrings, the back of your leg, and your calves are in direct contact. They're mushed together. Okay. So the deep squat is very good. One, because you've been laying in bed for 8 or 10 hours. So your body's pretty stiff. I think anyone can relate to that. Your body feels pretty stiff when you wake up. So your joints are not very well hydrated in the sense that they haven't been getting very much lubrication. You've been locked into a position for hours. That's why you have this lumbering feeling when you get out of bed and you want to stretch so much because your body is like, okay, I need to move. I'm feeling kind of stiff. That is a great way to get yourself moving and to actually start lubricating your knees, because that's really important. Knee surgeries are crazy. So keeping healthy knees is a big part of why you should do a deep squat. And while you're in this deep squat, now, a lot of people can't really do it because their hip flexors are not healthy enough to be able to do that. So if you can't do a deep squat, just do a squat as much as you can do. Go within the limitations that you have at that time. And then over time, gradually, as your hip flexors, especially if you're working out, if your hip flexors will loosen up and your ankle dorsiflexion will become more pliable or become more doable, increases, I guess I should say. Your ankle dorsiflexion increases, the deep squat will get easier over time. So it wasn't something I just naturally did very comfortably either. It's been a process of years and years to just go into that deep squat.
Sean, is that the same thing as the primitive squat that they say sometime? Okay.
Yeah. The primitive squat, I guess, is the deep squat. So, I don't know. I guess if you ever watch like an archaeological documentary or something like that, where you see these people, they go out into these tribal areas and stuff, like say the Amazon or something like that, you will notice that you see people young and old alike going into these deep squats. They cook like this, they defecate like this, it's very natural to them. And it's not because there's some wild athlete. It's just because that's what they've been doing all their lives. They don't have the first world luxury of sitting in chairs all the time. And on that note, going into a deep squat will help your digestive system, because as I noted in the video, when you squat like that, what happens? Your butt spreads apart.
Mm-hmm.
So your butt spreads apart, your rectum spreads apart.
Mm-hmm.
And the downward pressure that you're putting on your abdominal cavity will help push things out. Mm-hmm. So it will help move your digestive tract.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it will help move what's in there. All right, it's a part of what will help. It's not going to be a cure-all, especially if you're having digestive issues. There's other
Mm-hmm.
things that play into that too, but that will help a great deal if you
Mm-hmm.
just learn to do that on a regular basis. Which is why a lot of people, when they do this sort of thing, they start feeling pretty flatulent. Mm-hmm. Because you're pushing out gas. It's almost like you're releasing a lever. You're pushing out mm-hmm. gas. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's totally normal. It's totally common. So the lubrication of your knees is one. Being able to correct your posture and stuff like that, mm-hmm. because you want to stay pretty firmly upright, your shoulder blades mm-hmm. back. All right, you want to avoid like hunching over and things mm-hmm. like that. Ankle dorsiflexion, which is being able to move your foot in a functional sort of way. Deep squats are kind of like a Swiss Army knife for a whole lot of movement ailment. Mm-hmm. So just being able to do that and to move around in that position, like when you reach overhead or moving your knees back and forth and things like that, all the more better. It really kind of wakes up your entire body.
And it's really good for your lumbar spine as well.
That too, yeah.
And even as you are getting down into that squat, it doesn't even have to be, as you said, the full squat. You have to work into it gently. Again, then that's going to help your balance.
Yeah, exactly, too. So it will help with things like proprioception, which is the ability to sense your body as it moves through time and space. Mm-hmm. Your body will become more acute. You'll realize things better than you had before. You'll know where your body is versus where it's not. And even when you're moving, like if you feel off kilter when you're just moving around here, you'll be more sensitive to that because mm-hmm. you know how your body actually functions. So you will become more aware of your own body.
The other thing I think it would really be beneficial to would be pelvic floor.
Yeah.
Which is another issue that a lot of people have as they mature. Let's just call it that, maturing.
Yeah, it is something I've run into, especially with, say, women who are my age after childbirth. Mm-hmm. I've come into that a bit more so recently. So that is something of interest to me, pelvic floor health. Mm-hmm. And I've been looking into that. So yeah, definitely too, is like mm-hmm. because it does strengthen your core. Mm-hmm. And so your ability to actually hold your core in place, mm-hmm. And you're also kind of in a relaxed position too. It is kind of a relaxing position to be in that deep squat. So it can, do a lot to really help your pelvic floor health, especially if you're a woman and you've had a child, or you've had multiple children and you're having issues with incontinence. So you let out a big cough and then you end up peeing your pants and things like that. So definitely too. That's why I've learned as well too. It can help a lot with pelvic floor health. Mm-hmm.
So just so the listeners know, there are a lot of things that you can do for your pelvic floor health and fitness, because that mm-hmm. is a muscle too. And it's not only just Kegels, because sometimes they can be doing them incorrectly and it actually makes the problem worse. So.
Yeah, I never actually did a lot of Kegels or even had my people do Kegels mm-hmm. very much, whether they had pelvic floor issues or not. I was aware of it, but mm-hmm. I guess I wasn't honestly sold on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I would have a lot of people come into my office and they say, that they were doing their Kegel exercises, and then they would show me what they were doing. And it's like, well, you're doing them wrong. No wonder. So I think a lot of people aren't well.
Too. I don't think they're very well understood.
Right.
I always thought a better alternative would be maybe the glute bridge, where you're on your back and you're actually lifting up your pelvis and holding it there and then mm-hmm. bringing it back, mm-hmm. making it more dynamic. I always thought would be a better option.
And that's something everybody can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty well without messing it up. So the other thing that I saw on your videos, and it was just kind of blew me away, was the 4 different types of push-ups. I mean, push-ups is not, that's not really in my wheelhouse, but,
Uh,
we do a little bit of that in my pole class when we're conditioning before we get on the pole. But when I saw that, it really kind of, the light bulb in my head went off. And it was like, oh, okay, now I understand, like the different positions and the benefit that you can get from each one. So if you want to go into that.
Yeah, so that video was kind of like I originally envisioned it to just be like purely instructional, just kind of show you like different variations of push-ups and stuff like that. And I do that. I also kind of decided I'm going to make this kind of funny too, which is explains the last one, which is the archer push-ups.
Yeah, I know. I didn't think that
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's not on my list.
Right. Well, that's a cool thing to do, and it looks impressive as hell. But if you can do it, great, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily something you should be able to do. I mean, if you can, that's all the better, but I don't think you really have to. But the variations on push-ups, and it goes way beyond those ones I just showed you. So the regular push-up, it's really for more like traditional push-ups. Everyone knows what it looks like. It's really has more of an endurance purpose. Obviously, you're gonna build some. There's a strength component as well because you're pushing your body, lifting your body off of the ground repeatedly. So when a lot of people do like the 50 push-ups, something like that, they go straight into those traditional push-ups and they just rep it out, as much as they can. And when you're doing 50, 75, 100 push-ups like that, it is really just for reps. And you are building up your endurance, your muscular endurance, which is important. You'll need that. Now, when you get into more complicated things here too, where you're going into diamond push-ups, where you're putting your hands together in a diamond shape, and their hands are more center mass, right here where your sternum is, then it becomes more tricep dominant. And so it increases the level of difficulty because your leverage is lost from the wider stance of the traditional push-up. And so you're using a lot more of your blunt strength to move your body up and down in that fashion too. So for that reason, most people can't really get as many reps in just by doing the diamond push-ups versus the regular push-ups, right? Until you get very well accustomed to it, and then you can probably rep those out maybe just as easily as you can the traditional ones. What was the other one I had? I had regular, I had diamond. Oh, the plyometric ones. Those are all about power and strength. So it's about exploding off the ground and clapping your hands together, and then catching yourself as you come back as you're coming back to the ground before your face slams into the ground or something like that. So and all these different variations have a strength component to it as well. It's just that they prioritize one thing over the other. So you have endurance, you have brute strength, and now you have power. Okay, so plyometrics is all about just building power. It's being able to respond quickly to things, reactionary training. And the archer push-ups, like I said, is just kind of like a show off. It's like, hey, look at me, look what I can do, that sort of thing. So, and that has value in its own right. You will impress people if you can do those things. But it goes way beyond even things like that. There's lateral push-ups where you push up and then you're twisting your body to the side to side. There's Spider-Man push-ups where you're bringing your knees up to your elbow and then, doing push-ups like that. Handstand push-ups, which are very intimidating. Doing a handstand and then moving your body up and down. I mean, if you can do that, you'll have people eating out of your hand. They'll be running to you. It's like, man, how do you do that? But yeah, so it was really kind of it was to show you the reason behind every push-up, as far as I can see it, the reason behind every push-up, and two, to kind of give you a laugh.
Well, so basically, in a nutshell, the archer push-up is a vanity push-up.
Yeah. As far as I can tell, I mean, it's probably, like I said, there's probably is an actual physiological benefit to being able to do that. If you have like good mobile shoulders, and you can get yourself from one side to another like that. I mean, it probably does speak to your overall sense of power and strength, that the fact that you can do that pretty effectively. But yeah, it is kind of just a showy sort of thing. really more than anything. Now, something that's actually much more impressive, I think, than the archer push-up is the one-handed push-up, where you have one hand out and your other hand's behind your back or whatever, and you are repping it out like that with one hand. Now, I think that is a much better, much more illustrative of how much strength you actually do, how much functional strength, relative strength you actually do have versus like an archer push-up.
So one question, have you ever seen anybody actually do a handstand push-up?
Not in real time.
Okay.
I've not actually see that. I see it quite a bit on Instagram because, Instagram knows what stuff I put out there, what stuff I look at. And so, how the algorithm does, it just floods you with all these similar things. And so I see it quite a bit on Instagram, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone do a handstand push-up, honestly.
God, that would be so terrifying. Okay, so the other thing I wanted you to talk about is rotation and the value and power of rotation and spirals in movement. I think a lot of people don't realize, they might think that when they hear the word rotation, they think twist, like a hard twist of the spine. And our bodies are meant to move. I mean, in nature, there's really no such thing as a straight line. So that ability to be able to rotate, if you want to address that, I'd really appreciate it.
Right. Well, I think rotation is probably the most overlooked and underserved part of human movement. Like you said earlier, before we went on recording here, we move in a very kind of unipolar sort of way, or at the very most, a two-polar sort of way. We move forward, and that's really about it. People don't really move backward, not that much. They move backward and then they put their car in reverse. That's about it. But people walk forward and then they go up and down. They sit in their chair and they get back up. They sit in their chair, they get back up. So it's moving forward and moving up and down. And so the whole idea about twisting your body, there's three main planes: the sagittal plane, the transverse plane, and I'm
frontal.
Frontal
plane.
Frontal plane. Yeah, I was blanking on it right now. Yeah. So the transverse plane is the one that gets overlooked the most here, and that's about twisting at the core and being able to rotate your body in a different direction here. Now, that does have power implications to it. So when you're swinging a bat, like baseball players swing bats, and they do it very aggressively too. So they do need their core strength and their core power to be considerable in order to knock that ball out of the park like they do. Golf players are the same way. But aside from that, there is just the everyday movements of say, for example, when you fall, most people fall, they don't fall just straight forward down or back. A lot of times there's a rotation involved in it too. So they fall and twist and things like that, or they just reach for something, or they turn around and or they're moving boxes. So they're moving something from the ground and they pick it up and they twist it over and then they reach and they place it on a top shelf and things like that. So yeah, rotation is something I think that really doesn't get worked as much as it should. And it is very much the definition of having functional strength and functional power, because you have to be able to move efficiently in all different planes: the sagittal, the frontal, and the transverse. All right.
That's something we definitely work on a lot in martial arts, because you have to have that rotation of your pelvis. For somebody my size to be able to move somebody much bigger than me, I don't have the strength, really. I can't outpower a cat. But if I really move from my pelvis and I use my core and I get that little bit of rotation, then I can do it. And it's actually really empowering and a wonderful feeling to experience.
Right. And again, it keeps things very well lubricated and hydrated in terms of the joint efficiency and the joint joint fluidity. So, the more you can bend and twist and, alternate directions, turn 360 degrees or something like that and not experience pain, all the better for it.
Absolutely. What do you think, Sean, the biggest mistake people make when they're trying to get into shape or work on their fitness, especially if they are in that magic time frame of 40 and older?
I think the biggest mistake, and this is not really their fault, I think this is something that they got led to believe. The biggest mistake is that they have to do things in accordance with their age.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So they have to resign themselves to what are designated as old people workouts. You know, doing chair yoga or something like that. I'm not bad mouthing chair yoga or yoga at all. I love yoga. There is a purpose to it. But they just kind of write themselves off right from the very beginning, saying, I can't do that, I'm too old. You may be not too old, you're just too deconditioned. And so, and this, like I said, it's not entirely their fault, because the industry itself leads them to believe this sort of thing too. There's entire industries that have popped up about senior fitness, senior workouts, senior this, senior that. Now I understand the reason for it, because they're trying to make something that's digestible to people who are like in their 60s or 70s, and they haven't really worked out for a long time, if ever before. And they know that they're probably pretty afraid of getting hurt. That's understandable. I'm afraid of getting hurt too. It's just that I don't want to get hurt when I work out. I weigh the risk of reward and reward. You know, if this is going to really hurt me if I try to do this, I might try it out. And if it seems like no, this is way too dangerous, I'm going to back off of it. But I'll give it a shot. And you know, more often than not, I'm able to actually get some sort of benefit from it if I don't push things beyond the level that I'm at right now. And that's really all you have to come down to. Now, that's kind of where I come down on. I don't really believe there is such a thing as senior workouts or senior exercises. I think you should approach a person, and I'm probably gonna get myself in trouble for this. I think you should approach the person from what level of condition they're actually in, as opposed to what age they're actually on. Now, getting older, there is certain things that come with getting older that you do have to account for, right? So, I mean, someone who has never worked out before and is now 70 years old is different than someone who's never worked out before and is 20 years old,
right?
Because they're just older. But instead of, you know, applying a workout regimen or approaching them from a position of, you're 70, so you should be doing these. Why don't you approach them from a different point of view and say, well, your body is like this, so we need to do this. Now that's more of a mental shift than anything else. But I really kind of think that you're robbing this person of their potential and their dignity by saying, well, you're an old person, so you should be doing this workout that's meant for old people. You know, I know I think that's kind of degrading. But that's kind of where I come down on it too. So if you're older and you're, you know, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, you know, don't write yourself off. You have to find something that's going to work for you at where you're at, obviously, depending on where you want to go, you know, and you have to find obviously someone who is willing to help you in that way, and somebody who actually is considerate of you and where you're starting from.
I love that philosophy. I think that's absolutely beautiful.
Right. And as opposed to just thinking, well, I'm this age, I can't do this. Approach it from like, well, I'm in this shape, I can't do this right now.
Right. Not yet.
Maybe I can a year from now. And no, maybe I won't match this 21-year-old over there, but I don't think they really want to.
No,
honestly.
Yeah. And just, I want the audience to know that in my martial arts class, we had a lady start, it was about 2 or 3, it was before the pandemic, at the age of 68, started training in this martial art. And there is a friend of mine who started pole dancing when she was 68. So, you know, you're never too old, and don't let, I think it's also society kind of puts that
Mhm.
limit on us. It's society, it's the media, it could be our medical providers, friends and family. You can't do that. You're too old. You need to quit skiing. You're too old. You're going to get hurt. And if you've been skiing all your life and you're now 80 and you love it, that's awesome.
Right. No, yeah, you're exactly right. It is cultural, it is societal, it is social
Mhm.
media. And like I said earlier too, so I don't really blame people who feel this way too, because this is what they've been told all their
Mhm.
lives. I mean, the fitness industry is very youth oriented. They
Mhm.
want to appeal to a youth market, so they put out all this dazzling stuff, and all you have to have is an Instagram account, and you see it
Mhm.
every single day. You'll see these very healthy looking young people,
Mhm.
all very attractive looking
Yeah,
too.
the beautiful
Yeah,
people.
right, all very beautiful and doing all these things. It looks like someone out of a Marvel comic should be able to do, and no one else, right? So
Mhm.
it's a lot of it is just external input being fed
Mhm.
into their minds. And I've worked with other people, and just walking into a gym for just going into a gym is intimidating to them, is scary to them.
Right.
I mean, I've met people taking on new clients. I meet them for the first time, and they see me walking towards them, and they look at me like a lion just walked into the room or something like that. They're afraid of
Mhm.
what they're going to encounter with having me
Mhm.
at the helm.
Mhm.
And so I mean, be aware too. If you're a trainer, you're working with older people. That's kind of the perception you're going to deal with too. Like
Mhm.
everyone thinks that they're going to get Jillian Michaels for a trainer. And maybe some people maybe want that, but I don't think
Mhm.
most people do. I don't think most
Mhm.
people at all want someone who's just going to scream in their face all day
Oh,
long.
I would just want to punch her in the face. I mean, I just don't think I would, handle that very well. So that's another thing I really want to emphasize for the listeners is that, don't let fear hold you back. Don't
Mhm.
fear, the fear of failure, the fear of getting hurt. Make sure you choose the right person to work with and get in the right environment. And then, there's no limits on what you can achieve and what you can do.
Right. So instead of like I said, I just want to reiterate this again. Instead of training someone based on nothing but their age number,
Mhm.
train them from where they're starting at.
Mhm.
Train them from the condition that they are currently in. That's a big mindset
Mhm.
shift. But I think that's a critical one. So I think that if you train someone according to where they're at,
Mhm.
then training a senior person is not much different than training someone who's in rehab after a car accident.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about your podcast. What made you decide to start a podcast?
Uh, well, I mean, I toyed with the idea for a while. I thought it would be fun, and it is
Mhm.
fun. I
Mhm.
thought it would be interesting. And really, I came at it from a point of view where, one, I wanted to reach out to as many people as I possibly can because I'm a sponge and I like talking. I like taking as much as I possibly can. I mean, I have books all around me. You can't see them because the camera's pulling away from them, but right in front of me, I have books on
Mhm.
everything you can just about imagine. I'm trying to soak in as much as I possibly can about as much as I possibly can, especially when it comes to things like physical fitness and things like that. And I'm well aware that I don't know really half of anything in this world.
Mhm.
So I know there's people out there who are much better educated than me, who know a lot more than me. And so I can learn from them by talking to them. And the people listening can learn more by talking to them. So I came at it from an educational point of view. And I thought it would just be a nice little adjunct to my business as well, too.
Mhm.
So, I got into it. I toyed with that idea, and I finally just kind of pulled the trigger and started doing it. It started out as just kind of like just me talking
Mhm.
into a microphone for 30 minutes and stuff like that. And I did a few episodes just like that, but I didn't think they were all that great.
Mhm.
And, you know, just I know for myself, just listening to a podcast, when I listen to podcasts, I always listen to interviews. I really don't want to listen to someone talking to me for 3 hours. Even if I'm interested in what they're talking about,
Mhm.
just the sheer just sound of their voice for nothing but 3 straight hours. And some people can do that, you
Mhm.
know. And if they the fact that they can do that, hats off to them, because I could not. I'd be going after an hour. I would be out of things to talk about.
I couldn't go for an hour. I could only do, my first ones were about 20 or 30 minutes. It was the same thing. And it was, I believe they're cringeworthy at this point. I think I went back one time and listened to one, and my ears started to bleed. It was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I had to work up to it. Yeah. So it was about 20, 30 minutes, but I didn't think they were all that great. And I thought this would be much better if I actually talk to people like I want to, and so I did. And so I started getting on, the Podmatch platform like you. And I started hooking up with people, and it's been great. I think the quality of the show has exploded 10x since I started taking on interviews. And, the first interview wasn't even through Podmatch. It was just a local woman here who ran European Martial Arts Historical Society or something like that. I had never heard of it until I met her, but apparently it's a thing. It's a chain. It's, it's a national wide thing, like European Historical Martial Arts, or something like that, where these people, they gather in this park here in town about once a month or so, maybe a bit more. And they get in full dress and they do duels and battles and things like that. And most of it is, depending on where you want to go, apparently most of it is just mock, like they're not actually fighting each other. It's just exhibition. But apparently she's really devoted to it. She goes into the actual fight. So it's an actual duel. You actually can get hurt.
Wow.
So she does that. And she talked to me. That was the first interview. We talked to her for about an hour, and it flew by too. It was so cool. And she was so enthusiastic about it. Her name's Anna Barton, by the way, if you're listening to this. It's the very first interview. It's way back. I started this in June. It's way back in June or July of 2022. Cool interview. Great lady. Listen to it.
I'm definitely going to look that one up and listen to it.
Anna Barton. That's her name. But yeah. So we just met. We sat in a room with one microphone between us, and just kind of hammered it out, ripped it out for an hour, and it was fantastic. It's like, oh man, this is really awesome. And so it's been going on ever since there. So really, it was one, entertainment, and really more educational for me and for the listener.
Excellent. Okay, so I have one last question for you, and that is, okay, so you're turning 40. Ooh, that's very exciting. Look into the future and see yourself as an 80-year-old.
Okay.
What do you see?
I see myself, one, being very successful in my business. I see myself having grandkids, possibly great grandkids. And I see myself doing most, if not all, the things that I do now. And I see myself looking back and saying, yeah, it was worth it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And, I hope then I can also say that I did something. Maybe I'm still working, maybe I'm not. I don't see myself retiring, to be quite honest. I don't see myself as a retirement type. But I hope I can at least say that I did something that really left an impression and really changed a lot of people's lives.
Excellent. Well, I believe that you already are. You're well on your way, changing a lot of people's lives and minds as well. And that, I think, is a very valuable, gift that you're giving to the world. And I know my listeners who are listening to this, especially if they have been, a little hesitant to either go to a trainer or try and get back into shape or fitness, you've given us some excellent, valuable tips and some great encouragement. And I just want to reiterate one more time, you are never too old.
No, you're never too old. And for your listeners, I will also say, don't let any trainer put limitations on you. Now, concern for your well-being is one thing. They should be looking out for you,
Absolutely.
but writing you off is not acceptable. So you want to try something, speak up, try it. Tell them you want to try this. Tell them where you want to actually go. If you tell them that you want to run a marathon, wherever you're at, I don't know, however old you are, you're maybe 70, 75, you're retired, you want to run a marathon, you never run a marathon, or you want to do an obstacle course. Plenty of older people do obstacle courses. You tell them that you want to do that, or you want to go, I don't know, bodybuilding, something like that. We have 80 plus bodybuilders. You tell them what you want, and then they look at you, go, well, I don't know about all that. Red flag, move on.
Absolutely. Great advice. Great advice. Now, Sean, where can people get a hold of you or find you? Just give us the links, to your website, social media, all that kind of stuff, and the podcast. It's definitely going to be on the show notes, but I really like to give the guests the opportunity to be able to articulate it themselves, because I think it's a little bit more personal.
Right. Well, the podcast is Fitness Reborn with Sean. It's just Fitness Reborn. The logo is Da Vinci's Universal Man, kind of like an X-ray of an X-ray type. So it's not like a drawn figure like you're used to seeing. It's more like an X-ray sort of picture. That's the podcast. The website is the School of, like you said, School of Natural Movement, and I have courses on there that are meant to help with deficits of all kinds. So you have like strength, one, neuromuscular, grip strength. That's another thing we didn't speak about it. Grip strength, being able to hold things and tightly. Okay, if that is a huge indicator of how much you're actually how long you're going to live. Actually,
wow.
They have found that if your grip strength, if you don't have a good grip strength, your life expectancy is actually pretty short, relative.
Wow.
Yeah. Because you can't hold on to things, so that means your strength is not very good.
Right.
And if your strength is not good, then your durability is not good. They all kind of tie into one another. Now on Facebook, it's just my Facebook site is Sean Carlton-Appleton. That's my profile page. The business page is Renaissance Fitness Personal Training, and has an orange logo. Again, the Da Vinci's Universal Man. And Instagram is Sean the Movement Specialist. That's Instagram.
Okay. And you no longer work with people online, or are you available for like consultation or coaching online?
I'm available for coaching online. Absolutely.
Okay.
I just don't necessarily do the Zoom classes online.
Gotcha.
Right. But no, I work with people online, and actually, ideally I like to do entirely online, because I can reach a broader audience. But honestly, and maybe I'll actually keep working with people in person, because I actually do like the in-person one-on-one contact. But no, I absolutely will work with people online.
Okay, because I know I've got listeners from all over the place, including Australia and Canada, and I think that they would love to connect with you and love to be coached and trained by you, because you've got a great philosophy and so positive, and makes me very happy that there is somebody else who is really promoting this health and fitness over 40 and 50 and 60 and beyond.
Well, I mean, I think it just makes perfect sense. I mean, because no one's going to stay young forever.
Right.
So you write off someone who's older and saying they can't do stuff. Well, you're just writing yourself off too. You're just kind of, what are you saying about yourself?
Yeah, because you're going to be there someday.
Right. Are you going to say, you're this healthy person right now? You're going to say, well, no, I'm old. I can't do anything anymore. Got to have my walker and my wheelchair and my glass of iced tea. Is that really what you want to say about yourself when you're older? I doubt it.
Yeah, they used to bother me a lot when I was working in rehab. I worked in like a rehab hospital and several different rehab facilities as a physical therapist. And I would get so irritated by the level of disrespect. And I don't think it was intentional on part of like the therapists and the entire rehab team, how they would talk to older patients and individuals. It was just very disrespectful. It was almost like they were talking to them that they were like a child. And, it was just so disrespectful and so undignified.
Yeah, it tends to be very condescending.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, you know what? You're going to be there someday, and you'll know what it's like. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. Thank you for the wonderful tips. And it's been just a delight to talk to you again.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me again, Cheryl. And it's good talking to you. On my own show, I know it was a real joy to have you. Your profile, I will say, your profile, when I came across it, was one of those few ones that just jumped right out at me. It was like, oh, wow. it was like the right underneath your picture, just like the tagline. It had everything in it that I just love. I was like, oh, wow. Gotta talk.
Oh, good. It's good to know something's working. So I love to hear that. Thank you for the feedback.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. As always, I really appreciate you. Do share this episode and help get the word out about fitness over 40, 50, 60, and beyond. Connect with Sean, go to his website, contact him, consult with him. If you need some coaching, obviously, you'd be in really good hands. And the last thing I really want to emphasize is you are never too old, and do not let anybody tell you that. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.